A March 6th meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have 4 committee meetings this evening: a Grants and Community Development Committee meeting, a Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, a Sustainability Committee meeting, and a Police Committee meeting. We'll start this evening with the Grants and Community Development Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Epstein.
Thank you, President Sinai. Okay, so we have one item on the agenda this evening for Grants and Community Development. We have a public hearing on substantial amendment to the CDBG action plan for 2019 through 2023 and approval of the substantial amendments. So we're going to open that for public hearing. And first, Emily Crane is going to come on up and give us a brief overview of that amendment, and then we'll open the floor to the public. Thanks.
I hope this is on. It's on. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Epstein, and good evening, everyone. As Commissioner Epstein noted, the purpose of this public hearing is to hold a public hearing on this substantial amendment, the proposed substantial amendment for the 2019 through 2023 annual action plans for the CDBG spending, and to consider conditional approval of the amendment pending public comment. The amendment would need to go to the full board for approval on the 20th of March. So in case you're wondering, what is a substantial amendment? As you all know, we prepare an annual action plan every year when we receive the CDBG funding. And in the action plan, funds are allocated to certain projects or activities, as HUD likes to call them. And HUD does allow certain flexibilities with spending the money, carrying it over from year to year, changing project budgets to a certain extent. Some of this can be done at a staff level, and at other times making these changes triggers the substantial amendment procedure process. I'm just going to read from our citizen participation plan. The amendment may be necessary in the event that the township elects not to complete an activity contained in the consolidated or action plan, to complete an activity other than those described in the plan, to make substantial changes in priorities or distribution of funds, or to change the purpose, scope, location, or beneficiary of an activity. So specifically to this amendment, if a project or activity is canceled altogether, or if we're changing the budget amount by more than 50% up or down, or if the township wants to propose a new project that was not in the action plan, we have to go through the substantial amendment process. They're pretty common. Substantial amendments are pretty common practice, but we haven't done it that much here in the township. Some of you may not remember doing it at all. Some of you may remember, if you were here, that we did it twice during the COVID, during the pandemic. HUD required that we use a substantial amendment to allocate all of the COVID funding. So we went through that process twice, once for each round of funding. And the process involves advertising the amendment, putting it on public display for 30 days, having this public hearing, and then having the board approve it before it goes to HUD for final approval. So the question of the purpose of this particular substantial amendment, the purpose of this amendment is twofold. The first part is to provide final allocations for the COVID funding, and the second part is to reallocate some annual entitlement funding from different years. And the proposal involves taking funding from certain projects that have been canceled or stalled and moving it to other previously approved projects, so not new projects, but previously approved projects, where the funds can be spent in a more timely fashion. And just to give you a little more detail on both of those, for the CARES Act funding, the amendment proposes a final allocation of $136,000 in COVID funding. These allocations were previously approved by the board, but did not go through the official amendment process with HUD, so we're doing that now. You might remember there was quite a bit of movement in deciding what needs were, so I came to you a couple times to ask to change things, but we didn't go through the official process, so we're doing that now. Almost all of this money has been spent already, and the amendment's really just providing final budgets for the relevant action plan. The remaining $296,714 in funding that is proposed for allocation is annual entitlement funding, and moving it will just allow the township to more efficiently spend this money in order to comply with HUD's spending deadline requirements. There are a variety of reasons money is being taken out of certain projects and putting into others, and we can go through that in more detail if you need to, but for all the projects where we're proposing taking money out, this does not preclude us from funding these projects again in the future, even in this coming year. It will just allow us to move the funds more effectively to comply with HUD's regulations. You may have all seen in the first amendment, well, if you looked at the first amendment of the substantial amendment, I'm sorry, the first draft of this substantial amendment, you might have seen that the township was proposing a project to provide CCTV for the township television station. And after further consultation with our HUD consultants, our HUD reps in the Philadelphia office, it's become clear that that's not going to work at this time. So that's been removed. There were also two mistakes in the amendment, which will be corrected. So if you do conditionally approve it tonight, those mistakes, correction of those mistakes will be part of that conditional approval. And I think that's it. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you. So we can open the floor to the public if we have any public comments. Seeing none. Anybody on Zoom?
No one on Zoom has their hand raised.
Okay, so that closes the public hearing, and now questions mostly from the committee here. Any questions? Okay, I just will comment that I appreciate you walking me through this in great detail. We spent quite a bit of time, and I appreciate all of your work and consideration on this. So now I will put a motion out there to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of substantial amendment to the Lower Merion Township CDBG action plans for fiscal years 2019 through 2023 to include reallocation of both annual entitlement and CDBG CV COVID-19 funds, as well as corrections noted by staff and subject to reconsideration if substantial public comment is received prior to March 20th. Do I second? Thank you, Commissioner Woodring. Okay, any discussion needed on the motion? Thanks, guys. All right, I'm going to call for the vote. Anyone in favor, say aye. Raise your hands. There we go. Okay, so that seems to pass. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we got a thumbs up. Okay. Phew, I got a unanimous one then. Thank you very much. Everyone, that passes unanimously. And that concludes the business of the Grants Community Development Committee. And am I setting records? Maybe I'm setting records. Thank you.
We'll give you like the tie. Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner Epstein. So our next committee meeting is the Parks and Recreation Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
Thank you. There are two issues on the agenda for the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting tonight. The first is waiver of enforcement of the Township Code 111-4.2 regulating open containers for the Bryn Mawr Twilight concerts hosted by Lower Merion Township and Rising Sun Presents at the Bryn Mawr Gazebo. I'd like to ask our Director of Parks and Recreation, Donna Heller, to explain this issue. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to start with the alcohol waiver. We're seeking board approval for a waiver for the Bryn Mawr Twilight Concert Series to provide beer and wine at the summer concert series in Bryn Mawr. This would be the second year of this request. During the first year in 2023, sales were approximately $660,000, which was in addition to the program's escrow account. The sales would be limited to just beer and wine, and attendees would also be allowed to continue to bring coolers and outside food and drink. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any Commissioner questions or comments? Any public comment? Anybody online, Jody? No. Okay. We do have public comment. Thank you, Mr. Broida.
My name is David Broida, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Started Bryn Mawr Twilight Concerts in 2007. This is our 18th year. I'd just like to express my appreciation first for your service as commissioners. You put a lot of time in, and also for your support of Bryn Mawr Twilight Concerts. One of the things I'm most proud of, in addition to bringing nationally touring acts like Livingston Taylor, Dar Williams, we also put local acts on the stage as opening acts like Jonathan Doe, Richard Douglas, Becca Fox has been there. The Marion Concert Band will be there this summer. So I invite you all to come out. It's in Mr. Zelov's ward, but you all have residents who come. So please come out to Bryn Mawr Twilight Concerts. We look forward to seeing you this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other, if there's no other public comment or any response to public comment? Commissioner Gavin.
Thank you. Just very quickly, Mr. Broda, thank you very much for all of the work you do organizing. It's a wonderful concert series all summer, and it's a great addition to our township. Thank you.
I'd like to then move that we consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of a waiver of Township Code Section 111-4.2 as requested by the Parks and Recreation Department and Rising Sun Presents to permit patrons to possess open containers with alcoholic beverages and serve alcoholic beverages in public rights-of-way within a regulated area at the Bryn Mawr Gazebo, 9 South Bryn Mawr Avenue, Bryn Mawr, during the Bryn Mawr Twilight concerts. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gavin. All in favor? It's unanimous, and thank you. Passes. The second issue on the agenda for the Parks and Recreation Committee is a briefing for commissioners on the design development of renovations and an addition for the adaptive reuse of Ashbridge House. Ms. Heller.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just want to provide the Board of Commissioners an update regarding the design development of the renovations and additions for the adaptive reuse for Ashbridge House. Ashbridge House is a Class 1 historic resource and is also eligible for listing on the National Registry of Historic Places. And we've been working throughout the years to preserve the structure, all of the structures there on the parcel. And the best way to preserve a building is to have a regular use within the facility. To that end, we've been seeking a possible reuse for the facility for almost 10 years now. The house currently has multiple levels within each floor, a non-ADA compliant single restroom, and a steam heating system without air conditioning. This restoration and addition will provide the space necessary to make it ADA compliant and reactivate and re-energize the facility. The plans follow the Board of Commissioners' resolve sustainability efforts to use reasonable efforts, consider available affordable technologies, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Purdy Oakwyn Architects are here with us today to kind of run through a presentation of slides that will show the interior and exterior elevations of the facility, as well as the interior layout of the facilities. And following the presentation, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. So I'm going to try and load that presentation now as they come up for that.
All right, the first slide we're looking at is the site plan of Ashbridge House. Okay. Okay. The areas in blue indicate the historic parts of, the oldest parts of Ashbridge House that will be preserved, and the green indicates the area of addition, new addition. The front porch, the historic front porch will remain as is. It will remain the main entrance to the complex. The path in the rear coming from the parking lot will also remain in the exact same position as it is now. This is a floor plan of the existing first floor And if you can see here, the area in the rear with the unshaded walls is the newest part of Ashbridge House, and that is the part that we are proposing to take away to make room for the new addition. First floor plan shows the front block of Ashbridge House. Those rooms are restored and used for programs for the New Horizons Senior Center. The oldest part of Ashbridge, which is the northeast corner in the back, will be used as a kitchen. And then the green, the new construction, includes a ramp down. It's a lot of ADA functions in there. There's a ramp down to the level of the kitchen. There is a kind of circulation hub that connects all of the rooms in the building. The historic rooms, the outdoor rooms, you can see the terrace to the west is going to be an important split space for the senior center. And then all the ADA facilities in the green part will also be connected. An elevator, restrooms, fire stair, and storage cabinets. This is just shows a comparison side by side of the existing house and the new proposal. Basically, the footprint increases by 580 square feet in the proposal, but it also does a lot of good things for the plan. It increases the amount of natural light and views to the exterior compared to what was there before. Second floor, we have more kind of small program areas for New Horizons in the front of the building, and also offices, both enclosed and open offices for the staff of New Horizons, more towards the rear. We've shown a light court in the middle of the plan, which is on axis with the existing staircase. And the purpose of that light court is to really let you know what is historic and what is new. There's office function in the eastern half. The western half is the same as the first floor with the ADA facilities. Third floor plan stays as is now, which is unoccupied. You can see on the left, the elevator overrun is in the top of the gable. You'll see that later in terms of the elevators, but it's sort of worked into a historic massing for the house. And finally, the basement plan indicates a lot of storage. New Horizons likes to change out the rooms. They have rooms that are used for yoga classes, etc., and then it can be turned into a dining facility. So they have a lot of furniture to change out, and the basement is the major storage space for that, accessed by elevator, fire stair, and also through the existing basement. So with that, Tom will take you through the elevations.
Yes. Hello, I'm Tom Purdy. So, as Linda mentioned, the front elevation will remain unchanged. As you drive up the drive, you will not even see the addition. The side elevation, this is viewed from the parking lot. The key here for us is that it's a simple volume, just like the house, has very sympathetic windows, just like the house. But we're also trying to set it off a little bit to make the house really sing in terms of its masonry. So the new addition has a very taut, high-quality cedar shingles. A little bit similar to what the building, the back addition is now, but much more clean and simple. It should be said, though, that this elevation is not what you would really see. And I apologize, we've added a slide to keep things interesting. What happens from the west, we have the gazebo, and we are restoring, there's two masonry columns there that are adjacent to the gazebo. And we're restoring a historic trellis on top of that. In addition to that fabulous tree there, the holly tree, you will barely, from the west, all of the landscape and the site structures are designed to highlight the historic mass of the building on the right. And that's another reason for the placement of the addition kind of secondary to the historic house. Now, here's the section through, looking the same direction, looking towards the barns from the parking lot, but we're cutting a section through the grand central stair. When you enter this building, it will look exactly, except a lot better than it does now. We're going to refurbish the handrail and the balustrade in exactly the way it is now. It's a Class 1 resource. That particular stair is not required to meet all of the ADA gripping guidelines. That can happen with the elevator. We are meeting ADA, particularly in a Class 1 resource, is highly valued. As you go under the existing stair through the back of the building, you enter the place that Linda's talked about, the space that connects all the places of the building. Showing here is the ramp that goes down to the 1710 building through that opening. Those are all existing openings. On the second floor, we're cutting through the light court that Linda mentioned. And what we're seeing now is a reconstruction from the roof up of the 1710 building. The dormer on the right was covered over by the 1890s addition. Dormer on the left is existing, but it's very hard up against the existing addition now. So we're essentially recreating the building, the roof lines from 1710. And you will see this from the addition as you leave the building to use the facilities on the other side. The other thing to point out here is there's a window at the landing of the historic stair that was, in all likelihood, we don't have hard evidence of it. I'm sure we will when we do start some of the demolition. But there was almost certainly a window there before the 19th century addition came. So we are recreating that window, which will flood the main stair with light. The back elevation, again, very simple, taking a lesson from the massing of the building. We're not being very clever here. We're just being very simple and straightforward. The windows, again, sort of defer to the windows of the historic building. And there you see the pergola and the gazebo on the right. This is a section through the court, the light court, and the central stair looking the other direction, showing the addition with its sympathetic windows, again, a grouping of them in the place right when you come out of the historic building. It's flooded with light, and you get views back to the historic building. We propose to recreate, restore that back wall masonry. We're accessing, we can go back to the plan if you like, but we're accessing the addition all through existing openings in the historic building. We are not cutting any new masonry or holes in the existing building. And finally, this just shows, again, the site plan with the gazebo, the trellis that I mentioned that we're restoring, the holly tree kind of nestled next to the addition. And all of the landscaping we're proposing stays in place and gets elevated. It needs some work. But the concept of it, of a nice lawn that really highlights that west elevation, will remain. So, any questions?
Get out of here, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Commissioner Grimes?
Thanks. So do you have any renderings of what it's going to look like?
We can provide those.
But you don't have any right now?
We do not have any right now. We're right at the design development, starting the construction document phase. We can provide those if you would like.
So is from the designs you just showed us, is the addition going to be consistent with the historic features of the existing house, or it looks like it's going to be some sort of modern thing?
It will, the spirit of it is consistent. The double hung windows, the spacing of them, the Department of the Interior, the gabled massing, the Department of the Interior actually specifically says in Class 1 resources that you must contrast rather than ape. So we don't want to ape the building. We don't want to, besides we physically could not. It wouldn't be too expensive to do that, to build it out of stone, and
Right.
it would be difficult.
So once this I get there's no vote tonight by us. This is just for discussion, which is helpful.
Just for discussion.
Good. So then at some point we'll see what the design looks like. Does the historical commission weigh in on this addition?
Yeah, I omitted that, but I did include it in the issue briefing. We did have to go to our historical commission. We went to a preliminary review with them, so all of their comments have been taken into account with this. We will go back to them with the final plan once we kind of get some direction here. We also have to go through the state historical because of a grant and a covenant on the property that we currently have. We've gotten the initial written okay, but they do want to review final construction documents.
Thanks. Thank you.
Commissioner Gavin?
Thank you very much. So a couple of questions and comments as well. You said, you talked about a light court a number of times. What is a light court?
A light court is a break in the massing of a building to allow light.
Okay, so there will be a little like gap between.
Yeah, it's, if you'd like to, I can go back to the presentation, but that's all right. We can describe it.
Okay,
We're
yeah.
we're pulling the mass of the building away from the historic building so that we can still get light into both, actually.
Gotcha.
Other designs would be possible to put it hard up against the building,
Right.
which would block all the light into both.
How big is it 6 feet wide, 10
It's
feet?
10'6", I believe.
Okay, gotcha. And so it's not a space where people are, it's not like a courtyard?
No, you don't
It's
go
just a
out there.
little.
There's
Got
a
it.
low slope roof.
Okay.
It's all visual.
Okay. You had said that there's 580 square foot increase in the footprint. What's the total footprint of the building? Okay.
Total footprint is 8,176.
Okay, is that after?
That's after, that's
Okay.
including the addition.
Gotcha, okay. One thing you had said, and Donna, I think this is a question more for you or a comment for you. In the presentation, there were a number of comments about New Horizons, this is for New Horizons, this is for New Horizons. We have a memorandum of understanding with New Horizons that as you said at the beginning, the best way to preserve a historic property is regular use. We haven't had regular use. It's used essentially twice a year as a polling place, which is wonderful for a polling place, but not having a regular use, we needed something. We came to this agreement with New Horizons. I want to make clear, this is not we're not giving this property for New Horizons. We haven't come to an agreement with New Horizons. We have a memorandum of understanding with them. If that doesn't work for some reason, does it still make sense to move forward with all of this work?
I would say yes. So the township will be utilizing this facility outside of the New Horizons or any potential tenants' use. Our plan is for nights and weekends. Obviously, a lot of civic space, civic meetings, and as the community would like to access it and use it. Right now, we've only used it very intermittent for various programs due to the accessibility. We keep things to 30 minutes so that people don't need the restrooms, those types of things.
So regardless, we would need to do, for ADA purposes, we would need to do a lot of this work regardless, if we wanted to maintain and renovate this building.
If we want to program and activate it, yeah, to
Okay.
invite people into the building, we need to
Gotcha.
provide the
Okay.
accessibility to.
Are we adding parking to
No,
this?
the parking look is proposed to remain exactly the same as it currently is. The daytime use and the potential impact on parking is very minimal.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Zeloff.
Thank you. Thanks, Donna. At one time, Ashbridge House was occupied by a employee, and now it's not. But will the improvements allow that to occur?
That is not part of the proposal. There's no tenant space or living space within the building. The former employee did pass. We considered him a caretaker for the facility. We no longer have caretakers, but one in our township facilities.
So there was an advantage to having a caretaker?
Yes,
right?
definitely. Yes,
Whether the
definitely.
caretaker is a current employee, a retired employee, or someone else, isn't there an advantage in a building that we're investing $3.5 million in as a historic structure to have a caretaker, ability for a caretaker to reside there?
I don't know that it's necessary because it would fall into the envelope of our facilities maintenance, and then there would be an ongoing use. The caretaker really was there to provide access to the building for community use, which then significantly has declined over the years. So I don't know that there would be a need for an in-house or a live-in caretaker. We could potentially engage a seasonal part-timer to do similar endeavors to unlock facilities, lock facilities, and check different aspects of the facility.
I'm a little surprised that we just have an MOU with New Horizons, but I guess a lease is coming. Is that, hopefully, maybe our manager can speak to that. But is the anticipation that New Horizons would occupy the building in some way, 5 days a week, 7 days a week?
The initial concept is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, so weekends, holidays would be open for township use.
Okay, but that's significantly greater use than occurs now.
Yes.
And perhaps, caretaker lived there, so there were eyes on the building, so at
Yes.
least 5-day occupancy provides the same function. But Ernie, can you speak to,
Sure.
I guess, how we get to a lease?
The intent was always with the MOU that we would reach a point in the renovations and then develop a lease agreement with New Horizons, once we understood when we could actually project occupancy.
Okay. Donna, who do you envision will be maintaining the building? Because it will now be a very usable building. We'll have none of the current deficiencies that make it more difficult to use. But it will need some, it will need attention. So how do you envision that, how the building being maintained?
Absolutely. It would be a team effort similar to our other community centers, between Parks and Recreation use and eyes and ears and facilities, as well as Public Works facilities maintenance crews that check and do various maintenances on our buildings. So it would be a team effort in that vein. We would also need to add it to the contracted service for regular cleanings.
And I wrote down 8,176 square feet. That's the building square footage. That's not the footprint of the building, right? That includes 3 floors in the basement?
Yeah, it has to.
Yes.
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 Okay. But that's significantly bigger than it is today?
The additional square footage that is encompassed in that 8,176 is 500.
So the addition is,
The additional square footage, 500 and something, you said.
the additional footprint or the square footage?
I think square footage.
Additional square footage.
So we're comparing the
Additional
8,200 square feet. How much of that is new?
Additional square footage, it's hard to, sorry. Additional square footage is a little difficult to say because we are taking some away and adding some.
Yeah.
So the additional square footage is 596.
Okay.
That's the
That's the
additional
net
from what it
new.
is now, net
Net
growth.
new. Okay, because you're taking away,
And adding some new. The square footage of the the add only. If we tear it out and pretend that the building, that 1896 addition didn't exist, the addition is 2,500 square feet,
Okay.
including the basement.
That's very helpful, thank you. And I guess the renderings, the elevations that Commissioner Grimes asked about. Donna, could you not wait until we next discuss this, but, send them out to the board? Because I think that would be extremely helpful for us to get a better understanding of what's proposed.
Absolutely, yeah, I actually, they asked me about them, and I said not at this time. It'll cost a little bit more because we have to do a little change order, but we'll need them for the Historical Commission as well, so.
Well, whenever
we will get them
you
yes.
have them, I'm not asking that there be a change order so we can have them next week, but whenever they're available, don't wait till the next public meeting. is what I'm
Understood.
saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much.
Commissioner Rick.
Thank you. I have two questions, and I apologize for being late if these items have already been discussed. About 10 years ago, we were concerned about the garage as being very unstable. Does any money go into helping that situation?
Since those 10 years ago, we have been working on it. The large barn is almost complete. We've been doing projects in-house to restore that facility. And next up will be the smaller barn.
Yeah,
so
and
we have that within our operating budget.
They're not used for anything.
The Parks Department uses the large barn for a lot of our operation and storage needs.
Okay.
We do a lot of woodworking and other things in that facility. And currently Lower Merion Little League utilizes the smaller barn.
And the Ashbridge house, the second floor is not when I was, always thinking of housing volunteer fire officers. Is there any idea or any how much that would cost to renovate?
That also was not part of the conversation, and I did receive some late-breaking news with regards to the project. It's being funded through CDBG funds, the development as well as some of the improvements. With that comes the requirement for it to be occupied by CDBG eligible entity.
Yes.
So it would not necessarily qualify for that.
That has, I haven't been there in years. How many bedrooms are upstairs? How many baths?
Honestly, I don't know. It is very, so the fourth floor, I believe there's 4 rooms on the the third floor. The attic space, there's 4 separate rooms, no restroom on the third. The second floor, there's also 3 distinct rooms, 1 full bath, and then kind of a multi-leveled area that could constitute a bedroom.
Well, hopefully in the future we can have more of a discussion. It seems to me that spending $3.5 million and having one tenant that, I think we can do better. But thank you.
I have a question. You said before that the third floor is going to be unoccupied. Why is it going to be unoccupied, and will it be renovated so that it could be occupied?
It's currently occupiable, it's just not accessible. So right now we're proposing its use as potentially storage, but it could potentially be additional office space or fill some other need. It's not in any kind of poor condition.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Oh.
Yeah, I just have a quick clarifying.
President Sinat.
So the 8,000 square feet that you mentioned, so Commissioner Zeloff said, okay, floors 1, 2, 3, and the basement. I'm guessing it doesn't include the basement, but I just want to, does it? Are you counting that in the square footage?
The
of
8,000 does include the basement.
Okay, okay,
Both basements.
okay. And so the net new for the renovation, the 2,500 square feet on the addition, of which only
Correct.
600 square feet is net new, that includes the below grade
Correct.
space in that count?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have public? I don't think
I
so.
believe so, do we? Jody,
Jody,
is there public comment for this?
your
or-
public questions or public comment?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Are there any questions from the public or any comments from the public? If you would please come up to the podium.
My name is John Grace. I live at 137 Airedale Road. So this is obviously very interesting to us, and thank you all for taking the time to consider the plans very carefully. My question is, we heard that no new parking is being proposed. What I didn't hear is how will access to those who New Horizons will be bringing to the property, how will that be, in effect, brought about? Through busing? Through additional cars? Will the staff park there? Do we know how many staff are coming? I heard Ms. Heller indicate that no new spaces were needed, but I was wondering, what's the support for the idea, excuse me, that that's not the case, and that we have enough parking with the other uses that are already going on in Ashbridge Park?
We usually wait till the end of
Yeah,
public
we
comment.
do public
Yeah,
comment.
yeah.
They listed all the public comment and then response after everyone is done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other, is there any other public comment or public questions? Anybody online?
No one's online.
Nobody online. In that case, perhaps somebody can answer the question about parking.
We don't have the exact staff count, but we also have a number of township vehicles that currently park on site there that could easily be located. I believe they were estimating 5 regular staff members. There are no plans for any type of official busing. Some people may use Transnet, the smaller bus, to get to a program, which happens in various locations throughout the township. A lot of them will be dropped off for various entities or programs. They also do a lot of programming with food insecurity, so they make deliveries from the warming kitchen out to the community to allow people to age in place.
Thank you. President Sene.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. I only asked a question before, so I just wanted to make a comment, but limiting our attention, or my attention, excuse me, limiting my attention to sort of what's being presented to us, which is the renovation of a Class 1 resource, which Commissioner Gavin pointed out we have to do no matter what. So leaving aside whatever the tenant may or may not be, I just want to say thank you to Donna and thank you to the architecture team. I don't need to see the renderings just yet to say that there are a lot of things about this that I think are terrific. I appreciate that the proposed addition is going to be sympathetic to the existing building and sympathetic to the surroundings of that park. I think that's important. I think the fact that you have separated out to provide light down the stairway and also continue to separate out what's new from what is historic is really valuable and an elegant approach to that. So thank you. I thought it looks very nice, and it looks to really meet the objectives of what we're trying to accomplish, which is if we have a Class 1 resource, we should treat it as such. And so thank you. I look forward to seeing the next iteration. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. Commissioner Gavin.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Mr. Grady, thank you for the comment, for the question. I think it's an important question. We've been having discussions with New Horizons back to 2018, 2017, something like that. Again, we're in a stage of a memorandum of understanding. There's nothing locked in at this point. Their intended use, from what they had said, if this works out, is really 9 to 3 weekdays, which are really the more quiet times at the park, during school hours, not after school, not weekends. So the parking, which gets filled, as you certainly know, as I know, on Saturdays, on Sundays, after school sometimes, would not conflict. So it really, one of the things that I think excited us about this potential use is that it's a use that's during a quieter time in the park. It's not an excessive use. It's not something that's nights, it's not weekends, it's not loud. So it really, I think, complements both from a use and from a parking standpoint. And really, nobody saw any expectation that there should be any need for additional parking. It should really complement and fit in when parking is available. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other responses or any other comments? In that case, thank you very much for your very informative presentation, and that concludes the business of the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Kramer. Our next committee for this evening is Sustainability, and I recognize its Vice Chair, Commissioner Woodring.
Thank you, President Sinai. We have one item on the agenda this evening, and that's the authorization to issue a letter of support for community solar. And I will first start with a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the issuance of a letter of support for Pennsylvania House Bill number 1842, an act providing for community solar facilities. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Epstein. And now I ask our Sustainability Manager, Paloma, to explain the topic.
Thank you. Do you have before you today a recommendation to issue a letter of support for Pennsylvania House Bill number 1842? This is an act providing for community solar facilities. Community solar is a model of solar energy development that allows residents who don't have the space or ability to install solar panels on their property to buy or lease a portion of a solar array and then receive a credit on their electricity bill. This type of model can't happen in Pennsylvania without state legislation for several reasons, largely related to how utilities are regulated in the state and the mechanism for how community solar projects sell excess energy back to the grid. So that's why this legislation is working its way through the House. At least 24 other states, including Delaware and New Jersey, have passed legislation enabling community solar. Supporting this legislation aligns with the goals of this board, and the sustainability plan specifically calls out community solar as something that Lower Merion should support to speed up the energy transition in the community. From an equity standpoint, community solar may be the only way for many community members to directly participate in solar development, including renters, homeowners who don't get enough sun on their roofs, people who don't have access to credit, and low-income or energy-burdened homeowners, since there's often cost savings associated with these types of programs. The EAC has researched this initiative and recommends sending a letter of support, and staff recommends issuing a letter of support for this bill, and I welcome any questions.
So first I'll open it up to the floor for public comment. Is anyone in the room?
Good evening, Thomas Crookham, Ardmore. So I think Paloma summed it up really well, so I just wanted to take a moment to thank the board for taking up the issue, and just to reiterate that this is no cost, no tax increases. This bill simply establishes a framework that allows this to happen, community solar to happen. Community solar is great because it democratizes solar and allows, as Paloma mentioned, those that couldn't otherwise participate to participate. So I just wanted to thank the board for taking up the issue, and it's a low effort, and hopefully you'll support the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room? Anyone online?
Nope.
Nope. Awesome. So now I'll open it up for questions or comments from the committee. Commissioner Churchill?
Thank you. Is there a comparable bill in the Senate?
I believe there is. It's currently in committee and it hasn't. As of now, I don't think there's plans for it to come out of committee anytime soon.
Won't come out of committee. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Zeloff?
Thanks, Commissioner Woodring. We don't do this very often, which is appropriate. I understand this bill has bipartisan support, which is important to me. Understand from Paloma that it's supported by the Pennsylvania Municipal League, which is a group that advocates for municipalities, and we're a member. And understand it's creating rules for free market innovation involving use of solar. As the member of the public just pointed out, it does not cost the taxpayers. It's not a mandate. Makes sense to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out in terms of support, because this a natural thing, I was looking at what was in our materials, and I noted that neither of our state representatives who represent Lower Merion were sponsors of this bill. But looking at the update, I see that Representative Mary Jo Daly is a sponsor. Maybe it was added later. So in case anyone was wondering aside from me, I would point that out. And I also endorse this. So thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else? I'm sorry, Commissioner Courtney?
Yeah, I obviously also support this. I think community solar is a great tool to use to accelerate residential transition to clean energy, and it provides an opportunity for all those reasons that Paul said. But I think what's particularly compelling is a chance for moderate and low-income homeowners and renters to be able to transition to a clean energy source.
I will add on my own comment here. In my profession, I do a lot of advocacy work on behalf of architects, and this is something we actively support. And so at least in the environmentally friendly committees that are in my industry, we actively gave input on previous versions of this House bill, so I'm very excited to say that we will actively support this moving forward. But there's no other comments, I'll go ahead and call it to a vote. So all in favor, say aye, or raise your hand in this case. I believe that passes unanimously. Oh, I'm so sorry. And with that, that concludes the business of the Sustainability Committee this evening. Thank you.
Who seconded this? I'm sorry. Okay.
We could high five next time.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Woodard. Our remaining committee for this evening is the Police Committee, and to chair that, I recognize Vice President Kramer.
Thank you, President Sinai. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight: an authorization to advertise parking restrictions, an authorization to conduct competitive exams for sergeants, and a presentation of a proposed red light camera program. And to start off, I will make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise a notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 145, entitled Vehicles and Traffic, Article 15, Schedules, Section 145-118, Schedule 18, Parking Time Limited, to establish a 4-hour parking regulation during certain hours except Saturday and Sunday on both sides of Penwyn Road, between Penn Road and Bolsover Road, the distance of 185 feet. May I have a second? A second? Oh, thank you, Commissioner Churchill. And I will note that we have Director Adams here and Superintendent McGrath, if anyone has questions.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time, as always. Hopefully I can keep this concise. Penwyn Road, in general, has seen an influx of vehicles from the high school as our enforcement has grown in that location due to the addition of our 7th attendant, which we're extremely grateful for. As usual, the cars have started to spread out a little further. They have decided to concentrate themselves on a small section of Penwyn Road between Penn Road and Bolsover Road. They had originally started more spread out in the area, and it was not quite significant enough that it was enough of an issue with the residents to be brought to the board's attention. In January, a new petition was brought to me. Inspections were carried out between January 26th and leading right up until this evening. of the area in question. And parking has become excessive and concentrated. It does obstruct the resident driveways. There are only, I think, 3 residents that are impacted on this block between Bolsover Road and Penn Road, but it has become a concentration of vehicles. It has become excessive and very inconvenient for the residents. So as the parking director, I support the measure. Police and fire do not have any accident or issues with the area in their histories, but fire specifically and ambulance always note that anytime there's parking on both sides of a street, as narrow as Penwyn Road, access is always an issue.
Thank you, Jerry. Do we have any public comment in the room? No. Online, Madam Secretary?
Actually, no one is on, no attendees are online.
Okay, okay, great. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Vice President Cameron. This is right around the corner from me. I sent all of you an email earlier today with some photos and some additional details and a map rendering of where this is. As you're probably aware from my policy in the past, or different votes I've given, that it's not really the fact that it's student parking that's so bothersome so much as it's the safety and the impassability of the road when there are cars parked on both sides. I think the picture I sent that was particularly telling is the one of a public works vehicle trying to get through with a high likelihood of taking out rear view mirrors. I've had several conversations with the residents, and in particular, the 3 on this small section of Penwyn are all in support of this restriction. So, thank you.
Commissioner Courtney. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Commissioner Kramer.
I have a question and then a comment. My question is, could the problem be addressed by restricting parking only on one side of the street?
It would certainly improve accessibility, but it would still result in excessive parking in the area. And all 3 residents do deal with inconvenience with, unfortunately, people not parking a great distance from the driveways where accessibility for their driveways is impacted. So having the vehicles rotate or being moved every 4 hours would typically open up access for most vehicles and also provide some of the needs for the residents to access their driveways and be able to have a place to park in the street if needed when they do arrive home from work or when they are traveling out of their home area or out of their driveway with a place to park.
Could some of the problems with, and I'm very sensitive to having access to your driveway blocked because I've had that happen to me as well, but couldn't that be addressed by enforcement, by ticketing people who park within 5 feet of a driveway, which is what our requirements are?
It can be. The 5 feet of a driveway is not a law. Our township, it is basically done via, the eye test. As far as traffic safety has expressed to me. You go out, you look at it. If the driveway is obstructed, we issue a ticket. If it is not, we do not. Obstruction of the driveway is, at least when I viewed our code as well as the Pennsylvania code, something that is very subjective and not a definitive distance. Mike, I don't know if you can speak to that.
I thought it was a 5 foot, that the requirement is in our code was 5 feet from the driveway, because I thought I had looked that up at one point, but perhaps I'm mistaken.
Whenever we have a sign, when I was in Public Works, if there was ever to be a sign or a telephone pole installed, that had to be 3 to 5 feet away from the driveway entrance on each side. But that may be some completely different than what you're expressing, but that is a code in our township Public Works Streets and Sidewalks Code.
I guess I have some real concern about this because what we've seen happen before is whenever we've tried to restrict student parking, and particularly this happened up near Harridan at one time, as soon as the student parking was restricted, it moved to the next block, and then it became a problem for the neighbors next door. And I am, you know, while I would certainly support having this be restricted on one side of the street to ease it, I'm really troubled by the idea of not allowing any parking here to basically preclude students from parking there, and then just moving the problem over to the neighbors on the next block.
And just so you're aware, Commissioner Courtney also can speak to this. The original request was from the entire block of Penwyn Road, from Sabine to Penn Road. And there were probably an additional 7 or 8 cars. The cars were spread out enough that it was not a nuisance to the entire area. They didn't meet the 70% criteria of residents who found it to be an issue. So we did not bring it to the board at that point. I had driven through similar to this twice a week, 3 times a week, usually at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. because those are good times to check for excessive parking, especially if it's related to school parking. And the area was not inundated. What has happened, in my opinion, is that the vehicles that were parking on that stretch near Sabine have concentrated on this smaller section of Penwyn Road because it's the closest section to Montgomery Avenue. So my feeling is if we move them off this section every 4 hours, or they see every 4 hours, they will once again spread out on the larger streets where they can be accommodated without being a nuisance.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Certainly. I think I'm going to take a very unfriendly opinion on this. I don't support this at all. I don't support the parking restrictions surrounding any of our schools, the high schools, or anything. These are public streets. These are not streets for those individuals. We get these same questions, I'm sure every commissioner up here does, when somebody just who lives across the street parks in front of my house every time. Well, I get a call, I don't like that they park in front of my house. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but it's not your street. And here, I think this entire problem is being caused because we have allowed the very extreme parking restrictions, if anyone doesn't know it, around the Lower Merion High School to have 2-hour parking restrictions on both sides of every street, anywhere that you could walk. And so now all we're doing is pushing it out. The high school kids don't care. They flood, they park. My office is in Suburban Square. The high school kids park the entirety of Suburban Square, so there's no parking there. All we're really doing is externalizing the costs of a handful of homeowners who purchased homes within immediate walking distance to Lower Merion High School and likely did so because it was a benefit to them to be able to have their kids walk to Lower Merion High School. I personally live next to a privately run school for handicapped children. Their staff park up and down our street every single day. Sometimes it makes it tough, but that doesn't give me the right to say that that school can't operate to help those handicapped children. And here, I would implore this board to start a subcommittee, I'm happy to be on it, to figure out a different way to handle these parking restrictions because the problem's not going to go away. It's going to get more dangerous, and high school kids are going to get more brazen about where they're going to park, how they're going to park, and just being able to drive and park outweighs any issue of, you know, they live a mile away, then they drive to the high school, but they have to park half a mile away to walk. That's nothing to them.
To play devil's advocate, if you lived here and you had a 1-car driveway or no driveway, and every day your wife was leaving home to bring the kids to school, and they were elementary school kids, and when she left the house and came back, there was nowhere on 3 streets near your house to park, would that be okay? That wouldn't raise a red flag to you.
Unfortunately, that's reality. I understand that that's not a great situation. I agree with you. I just drove into the city for a meeting last night and I was late for my meeting, embarrassingly so for myself, because it took me 35 minutes to find a parking space, which ended up being almost half a mile away from my meeting place.
And lastly,
before,
sure.
No, don't interrupt me again, please. Before we go any further, The fact is that these streets are all public streets. They are publicly maintained, they are publicly operated, and I understand it is an inconvenience for people all the time. I live right near Temple Beth Hillel. At the high holidays, you can't drive through my neighborhood. It is extremely difficult. It is horrible, basically. And we plan for it ahead of time because we know it's coming. I bought a house right near there. I thought it was wonderful. People walk through my neighborhood all the time. On the high holidays, they park on both sides of the street. That's okay because they are community members just like I am. I love this community. There are things that are great about it. There are things that are frustrating about it. But we are wrong to limit public parking in this way around particular areas to benefit individual homeowners to the detriment of other broader uses. And I really think we should, I know it's not going to be a friendly opinion here, but I really think we should have some kind of a meeting and some kind of a policy of the board. And if the board votes differently than me, that's fine. I will fully support the position of the board. But I think this keeps happening in piecemeal, and I understand where it's coming from and the sentiments causing it. But I think the board, similar to everything else that we're working through, needs to have a policy of how we're going to address this because it's not tenable, and all we're doing on this section of Penwyn, Penwyn Road, these people are going to park on Bolsover. And then we're going to be talking to you in 6 months about Bolsover before next school year, and then they're going to park a little bit further. And then they're going to park a little bit further.
To your point, the original request was for the entire block of Penwyn to be restricted.
Just allow Commissioner Whalen to finish this point.
No, that's okay. I've belabored the point long enough. I think everyone's clear as to where I stand.
Before we have, Jared, before you respond, let's just go to the other commissioners.
Oh, sure.
We'll go to President Sinai and then Commissioner Epstein.
Okay, thanks, Vice President Kramer. So as it will surprise no one, I have a somewhat different view, and I respect Commissioner Whalen's view, though I have a strong disagreement with the phrase "we are wrong." I think we can have differences of opinion without saying whether someone is morally wrong or morally right about this. So here's what I think the fundamental problem is. I think the fundamental problem is there's not enough parking at the high school, right? And the school district may have policies which may increase the number of drivers to the high school, and they're still not parked for that. And so then the question is, what to do about it? With the public school, it's a little easier. But let's say it's a private business, and a private business decides, rather than building parking on their site, they decide to underpark their site because around them are public streets, and therefore they will have their residents, their users, park on public streets so they do not have to pay the private cost. Yes, indeed, they are public streets, but that is an institution that is taking advantage of the public streets to the detriment of the residents who are around it for their private gain. In a private school, it's private, taking advantage of a public resource for a private benefit. A public school is trickier, right? Because that is one set of the public with another set of the public, right? So I'm sympathetic to that, but it is a broad group of public that is, effectively not bearing the cost, while a smaller group of the public who happens to live near that site for whatever reason they may have been there, who is going to bear the cost. Now, we may have disagreement about how big a burden that is to have people who are not your neighbors parking on your street. Possibly a bigger burden than your neighbor across the street parking from your house, right? Because we know what happens when people who are outside the neighborhood are parking there. But I think it is a burden. And the question is, well, what is appropriate? What is an appropriate burden? To make the parking easily available probably dissuades carpooling, right? Probably dissuades taking the bus. I've previously said, yeah, we probably shouldn't have a binary policy of either all parking is allowed or none of it's allowed. A policy that says, okay, well, if you're going to use a public resource, you have to pay for it if you're going to use it for private benefit, right? People who live on the street don't need to, but people who are going to effectively use it as an unpaid parking lot, like that would be an in-between solution, right? But this idea that Because streets are public, they can effectively be private parking lots. It's just not an idea I support. Anyway, that's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sinai. Commissioner Epstein.
I'm going to step way to the side of the ideological discussion, which I kind of agree with points on everybody. But when I saw the images of how tight that street is with the parking on both sides, my concern was just safety. So from that perspective, it does seem like something needs to be done. And I know those were images, we're not looking at them right now, we saw them in our email, but I mean, it was shockingly tight, and that would be my concern. So it's kind of a simpler one, but.
Thank you, Commissioner Epstein. Let's see, Commissioner Zella and then Commissioner Kramer.
Thanks. Just to add to what President Sinai said, I thought he was going to say it, but he didn't. I mean, it's going to, we need to incentivize use of school buses, and restrictions on parking do that. We have a very large bus fleet. It runs on natural gas. It is, anecdotally, the buses are generally not full. There's lots of capacity. We need to provide incentives for school children of all ages to use the school buses provided. So these kinds of restrictions are among those incentives. I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Zella. Commissioner Kramer.
I'd like to move that.
Commissioner, comment right now, and we'll get to you. Thanks.
I'd like to move to amend the motion to include the restrictions on one side only of the street.
Okay. And is there a second?
Is that a friendly amendment?
Is that a friendly amendment?
That was your motion.
Let me think about it. I think it is a friendly amendment. I would consider it a friendly amendment. Is there a second? Do we have to second that?
Whoever seconded yours would have to say it was friendly.
Yeah.
Who's second?
It was Rick, but it should have been Ray. Yeah.
I don't look upon it as being friendly.
So now what do we do?
You would need,
We need a second.
then.
You need a second.
That's not friendly, yeah.
I will second your motion.
Okay.
Discussion on that amendment. Yes, Commissioner, yes.
Thank you, and I would just note, I'd like to reserve a chance to talk about the whole thing later on. But
Okay.
in terms of this amendment, Jared, do you have an opinion about that?
I would like, if I could prefer, if it were up my decision, my petition, I would be a fan of one side. Again, because my main concern, as Commissioner Epstein is the access for our emergency personnel and the fire trucks. But the petition that was brought to me was for a 4-hour parking restriction on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Any other commissioner comment? Commissioner Woodring.
How would you justify which side then is picked?
You would probably look at it and see which side has fewer driveways, would provide the most parking and the fewest restrictions.
Do you have an understanding of what side that might be?
Yeah, I think we have. Do we have any of the photos? Are they possible? I don't think there might be one photo in your packet.
Only one of the 3 houses on Penwyn Road. So we can ask that.
I'm sorry, Ray. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Hold on. No,
Does the chair recognize me? Can I go?
Sure.
Of the 3 houses that are along this stretch of Penwyn Road, only one of them actually has a driveway onto Penwyn Road, I believe. So it would be a choice of that side.
There are 2 driveways.
Oh, there are 2 driveways. Oh, I'm wrong.
There's one right on the overhead. Google Map view that shows that area in question might show. There's one on the corner, and I believe the one, the property on, possibly on Penn Road has a driveway on that side, which would probably be the north side.
Okay. Thank you.
Other commissioner comment? Commissioner
Motion,
Burns?
right?
On the motion. Yeah. My comment is that I appreciate the sentiment here of limiting the restrictions, but also allowing for safety. I really like Commissioner Whelan's idea about, us creating a policy and really taking a look at parking around the high school as a whole. So I'm on the fence about whether to support the amendment, because I think that's, I'd rather see us consider this as in the bigger picture. Yeah. So I think I will probably say no to the amendment on that basis. Did somebody just say something?
I think they need you to speak up.
Oh. Okay. What else is new? Any other commissioner comment? And, well, come on up.
This is on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Yeah.
On the amendment. Do you want to, on the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'm Colleen Wortley. I live on Penwyn, not on that short section. One of the neighbors who is on that short section, luckily for her, is on vacation. One of the pieces that we brought this up to Jerry was, it is a really tight site. Penwyn is tight right there. And one of the residents' mother is 95 years old. And if an ambulance had to get down there to get to her for whatever reason, there's just no way. And when I leave for work in the morning, sometimes I have to back up in order for a car to come through. I'm not even sure one side would do it. The picture doesn't really show, and I know it's an overhead, 2 of the driveways are on one side, and then the other driveway is really where the bend is, where Bolsover comes in. I know there's a lot of talking about the student, but it's also, we consider it non-resident parking. And if there was a situation, and it is telling when you saw the truck, we've had problems with buses that have to back up. Trash trucks have to go around. Nobody can get down that section when there's parking on both sides. Okay, that's my only comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Denise Morris. I've lived on Penwyn Road for 25 years. I want to thank everyone for listening to this and helping us with this. And strangely enough, Commissioner Whalen, I kind of agree with you. But the situation, someone, whether it was you guys or previous people who sat in these chairs, have pushed the people to our neighborhood. So the only way to rectify this is to yank all the signs, and you can only imagine what the community would do if that happened. Incentivizing people to get on the bus it's the most sane thing I hear in regards to this. And in respect to the high holidays, we live 3 blocks from Mainline Reform Temple. So we experience that 4 days a year. This is 5 days a week, 10 months a year, for 8 hours a day. It's apples and oranges. The Mainline Reform Temple people, we're happy to have you. Park at the end of my driveway, inconvenience me, you'll be gone in 2 days. It's fine. But this is 10 months a year. And there's no record of this, but I've seen a fire truck back down from Penwyn Road to Bolsover, all the way back down to Sabine, because they couldn't get through. So but you're right, if we put the signs up, you might be seeing me here in 8 months, because now they're going to be on my side of the street. And I will be back. But I don't think we should have to take this burden on. And they're not Mainline Reform people going to synagogue. They're kids speeding in the morning. They leave trash on the street. And it's just, and I know we have to respect everyone who lives here, but we're the taxpayers. And it doesn't make any sense to me. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Whalen.
I would just
like
to respond to the public comment
Yes, please.
on just the amendment. I
Yes.
know I already spoke for too long. I actually, very surprisingly, I support what we're doing tonight, because while I disagree that with the basis, the fundamental basis of what we're doing, I don't think it's fair to impose the current issues on these residents, because multiple boards for decades probably have been pushing these issues out and further and further. So it's not fair to say, these 3 homes are going to bear the brunt. And I have driven this road. I haven't driven this road at a time when I have faced these issues, but every road, this needs to be a road-by-road analysis, right? There are going to be roads, and we've all driven them, we all have them in our neighborhoods, that are just too small. And they should have no parking on one side, maybe at all times, because it's just too tight and you can't get down where you need to. So I actually support, the will of the board, either this amendment or the motion as originally stated. I just believe we as a board owe it to the residents to fully adopt this issue and decide on a policy how we're going to address this, because right now all we're doing, very eloquently said, is pushing the issues further and further to other sets of residents, and that's not fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Gavin.
Thank you, Vice President Kramer. I hate to say it, but I agree with Commissioner Whalen here. I think we do need to study this. I think it's something we should look at. Until that time, I think absolutely right. We shouldn't kind of put this whole burden of an entire neighborhood of no parking, no parking, no parking, oh, park here. And so I do not support the amendment, because I think we should, continue that policy until or continue doing what we've been doing to protect the neighbors from this overburden until such time as we figure out what the right answer is. And the right answer might be to have no parking on the streets, because the institution itself should provide for the parking, and we should, I don't know what that right answer will ultimately be, but until that point, I think we should prohibit parking here. It's what, the residents have asked for, it's what the ward commissioners asked for. So, in that respect, I won't support the amendment, and I do support the underlying motion. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comment? President Sinai.
So thank you, Vice President Kramer. Just a plug, on April 3rd, this board is going to have a meeting to set its priorities for coming forward. I think I'm sitting next to the chair of the police committee, who could put as one of the proposed priorities that the board work on this, and then we might do it, right? So just a thought. Anyway, thank you, Vice President Kramer.
Thank you, President Sinai. Any other comments? All right. Commissioner Kramer.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think that, we did adopt a new policy related to parking. But what we never did, and this is consistent with what Commissioner Whalen is saying, and I agree with him 100%, we need to reevaluate all of our existing parking restrictions, particularly around train stations, where it limits the people's ability to park and commute, and other locations as well. And we should be looking at this in a systematic way.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Who knew this would be such a hot topic? All right, so we'll take a vote on the amendment. All in favor? The amendment fails.
Oh, we need opposed.
All opposed.
So we did not all abstain.
The amendment fails. All right, and then, did you want to make a comment before we go on to?
I do.
Before we talk about the, go ahead.
I do, thank you. So
Sure.
going back to this concept, unamended concept, which is now back with us, I am going to support this because I have supported other residential requests near train stations and elsewhere where ward commissioners have asked us to do this. And I think that these residents have gone through the process, and as others have said, this is not necessarily an appropriate place to call a halt to this without a comprehensive plan. What I will add to the other discussion is agree that this is a priority that we ought to think of on a larger level, because this situation is only getting worse. The school district is implementing later start times and an increased walk zone, which is going to increase the number of students who are driving. Yes. There's a situation right now where, and I wouldn't normally say it, but it seems to be very publicly known, a lot of kids park at Suburban Square during the day. I think someone may have already said it tonight. That's a situation that's up to Suburban Square management, but it wouldn't shock me if sometime that's cracked down on, which will create more pressure. At the same time, as Commissioner Zelov noted, There's school buses that are, the school district has a school bus driver issue, but their buses aren't full. There's a walk zone. Not everyone lives 1.5 miles from Lower Merion High School, but they don't walk anyway. And I would note that kids driving to school when they don't have to is contrary to our sustainability goals in this township. And in some ways is shocking how prevalent it is, given the way that a lot of kids in high school are all for sustainability. So having said that, I don't think it's something we can deal with on our own. We need the school district. But this is like squeezing the tube of toothpaste with the end open. It's only getting worse as we clamp down. And so I hope we'll figure, I don't know what the solution is, but I think it's something we need to talk about. But bottom line is I'm happy to support this tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. I do believe we've said all the things there are to be said. We'll take a vote on the original motion. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
What's the score?
I don't know. -1. This meant -1.
For the
Yeah.
listeners at home.
Thank you.
Was
What's
it
that?
unanimous?
It was not unanimous.
Gilda, is that okay to go on consent?
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you all. All right. On to our second agenda item tonight. We will be talking about, I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Civil Service Commission to conduct competitive examinations to establish an eligibility list for the position of Sergeant of Police. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Woodring. And I will turn things over to Superintendent McGrath.
Yes, Commissioners, currently there is not a current list certified for the rank of sergeant. We have one opening, the rank of patrol sergeant. In order to get the process started, this action has to take place, and then it takes several months to go through the testing process and get a list in front of the Civil Service Commission to potentially fill that position. Additionally, I'll tell you there's likelihood that within the next year to 2 years, there'll be additional openings in the rank of sergeant, so this will be in place to potentially fill those future positions as well.
Thank you, Superintendent. Commissioner, comments or questions? Commissioner Zeloff.
Thanks, Vice President Kramer. Mike, can you comment on the related issue that you and I have been exchanging emails about, and which you just sent one today, which is the police department's willingness to provide alternative testing dates for those candidates, primarily candidates for police officer, but I presume it would apply in the case of testing for higher ranks, for those who, for reasons of faith, do not wish to be tested, take a test on a Saturday, which is the typical testing date. And so you today emailed saying that the police could accommodate candidates for police officer who do not, as I said, for reasons of faith, do not want to be tested on Saturday.
Yeah, in reference to providing the test, option to take the test, we have talked to the testing agencies, because you need to also make sure that there is security of a test-taking process, that there's no sharing of information among potential applicants, but we can make a reasonable accommodation to address that request based on a religious exception.
And for a candidate who wishes to exercise that religious exception, what would they do?
Well, they would fill out an application for the position and then provide a letter saying what they're requesting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. Other commissioner comments or questions? I just have one question, Superintendent. How long does your score last? You know, if you take the sergeant's exam?
It lasts for 2 years.
2 years. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Any public comment in the room? Any online comment?
No, there's no attendees online.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And third, I will call on Superintendent McGrath to make a presentation on the red light camera program. And I'll just note that this is just to consider the concept of a program, not to discuss specific potential locations for the red light cameras.
And we're bringing up a screen with the presentation on it. One of the reasons for that as well will be to show you a couple locations and how the system actually works. Thank you. So as you noted, this is to talk about the automated red light enforcement program in the state of Pennsylvania. The law is Act 84, and it allows Lower Merion Township, along with other municipalities, the city of Philadelphia, to have a red light enforcement program. This question came up in the fall, and we started conducting research on both the law and the current status of these programs. A few of them do exist in our area. And I want to go over the pros and cons related to that and some of the process that's involved if the board so chooses to continue, gives us direction to move forward. So the surrounding agencies participating in the red light enforcement program include Adjournment Township in Philadelphia. Currently, Ben Salem and Warrington are putting their program into place. For implementation, municipality that wants to have the program has to pass an ordinance authorizing it. All intersections that would have these systems installed have to be approved by PennDOT. The locations must be based on safety and crash reduction. And the fines are set at a maximum of $100. Recorded images must be sworn to and affirmed by a sworn police officer. So while this program is run by companies that provide the technology, they cannot affirm the violation. A sworn officer must do so. The township will need to identify a hearing officer to handle violation appeals. PennDOT has approved 2 vendors in the state, and they're listed up there at this point for consideration if we go forward with installing the program. The vendors then would provide the equipment for the installation, they do the maintenance, and they take care of the administrative services. One downside is the owner, well, for the owner, the owner of the vehicle is liable for that violation. But it could be a defense that the owner was not actually operating the vehicle at the time of the violation. That's just a caveat to that. So the pros and cons. There are reported decreases in serious injuries, particularly from broadside T-type collisions. Revenue into safety improvement programs. Funds collected from the different municipalities are, a portion of it is sent to the state, which then is redistributed in grant programs. This increases police availability. So it's basically using technology as a force multiplier so that these systems are in place and officers can go to other locations to do traffic enforcement. And it does also encourage obedience to traffic laws. Experience and data shows that where these systems are in place around the country, people tend to pay a little bit more attention to the red lights. Some cons, there is a reported increase in rear-end type collisions in some locations. You'll actually see later on, we'll show you some information we received from Abington. They actually are an anomaly. They did not see that they had a decrease. But there are some increases in other places. Intersections, if the program actually is successful, you're going to have reduction in fines. People are going to behave themselves and not be creating violations in that particular area. There is no police officer discretion at the time of violation. Obviously, it's done by technology. There's nobody to talk to. The driver can't have a conversation with the stopping officer. And in some cases, there is a negative perception about kind of like the big brother approach to enforcement. So for Abington Township, they do 3 intersections currently. They've seen a 50% reduction in intersectional accidents. They have 700 to 1,000 violations captured per month. The violation revenue does continue to pay for the program. And there is an ease in processing the violations by the police department. They report it takes 1 to 2 minutes per violation. And I'll tell you this, we actually looked at this program back in 2013. We did a full research on the program and made a presentation to the board back then. At that point, the board did not want to proceed. So a lot of this information we had seen previously and concur with what Abington has also experienced over the years they've been involved in it as well. So here are some slides that Abington forwarded to us and what they presented to their residents. So the total reimbursed administrative and overhead costs since 2013 is just over $500,000. All of their expenses have been paid through June of 2022. They've had no unexpected costs have occurred as a result of the camera program. So their program staffing consists of 1 civilian staff member and 3 police officers. So the civilian position typically is responsible for conducting initial review, keeping logs of the violation, and sends the reports to the officers. Also, that person schedules hearings, takes public questions, and assists with record keeping. The officers who come out of their traffic safety unit, 1 officer oversees the red light program, completes all required reports, keeps the statistics, and conducts reviews. And then between 2 other officers, they conduct the reviews of the violations. That 1 or 2 minute review I was referring to. Again, the civilian staff member reviews the violations for the day and sends them to the traffic safety unit. In the report, 1 of the officers reviews the day and sends the report back. Between the civilian position and the officer, they log any changes on their spreadsheet. The civilian position then sends an end of the month report to PennDOT and also keeps department records. Violations are viewed from a website. So you log on to the website to see what's been collected since the last time you logged on. Again, violations take about a minute or so to review. Then that officer approves, verifies in fact there was a violation or not, can reject the violation. And then the vendor actually does the paperwork, sends out the violation notices to the vehicle owners. Again, we already said this, but it's a $100 fine associated to the program. These are violations. These violations are not criminal, they are civil. There's no points associated with it, and there is no report to the owner's insurance company. There's various payment options. You can pay online. You can go to the local police department and pay just as other people come to our police department to pay fines, or can be mailed directly to the vendor. Bless you. So twice a month, the vendors, this in Abington's case, sweeps fines to an account set up with the finance department at the township. Abington is then paid first for their expenses to run the program, and then the vendor is then paid their monthly fee. We'll get into that in a moment. So signs are required by PennDOT at these intersections where you put it in place. Place signs at different what they then did as far as education was to place signs about the program throughout the township so people be aware of it. They also utilized TV, social media to remind drivers of the locations where this program's in place. They actually held a Facebook chat, as you can see the date up there, back in 2017, to let people have a back and forth about it. Also put out handouts at local hospitals, courts, food stores, college campuses, and libraries. Met with civic groups as well to fill them in on what the program is about, how it works, how it is focusing on safety, not revenue. And then there's ongoing use of social media to keep citizens aware of how the program is going. So here is, well, there's two intersections where they shared a clip of a violation. So you'll see the vehicle in violation going from the bottom of the screen to the top here. Currently, if you can see it, it's not in color, but the, I'll put it, if I can get the cursor to work, you can see the signal up there. The cursor isn't working that well, but let's do it this way. So here we'll start the, I'll tell you when it turns red. Red now. That's how late that vehicle is going through there.
And then hard.
Looks like my neighborhood.
Let's go back and see it one more time.
Why did that take a minute to approve?
Again, it's yellow, red now. So fortunately, that operator turning left in the intersection was looking out for what was approaching and avoided a collision. Second intersection. It's yellow, red now. And you can see there that the vehicle actually had to change lanes to avoid the collision. When we did this in 2013, we had several intersections where the vendors actually put out some cameras so we could capture what could potentially be the issue at those intersections. And we saw situations that were actually worse than that, including one was a school bus going through the red light. So that gives you an idea of what you're facing with the intersections and what the cameras capture. So here is a look back 7 years before the system and 7 years since it's been in place. So on the left, you see their total crashes. Pre-cameras, they had 262 crashes. After the cameras were in place, it was 189. That reflects a 28% reduction. Angle crashes, you can see the numbers with a 25% reduction. Rear-end collisions, like I said, this is a little bit of an anomaly. They had a reduction in that as well, of 22%. And most importantly, injury crashes went down 34%. Really, that's the key for all this, is you're trying to increase safety, get people to comply with. If they comply with stopping at intersections where you have this technology, perhaps that'll carry over to other intersections that don't have the cameras up. So here, some other considerations. Most of the information available on red light cameras indicates there is a positive results as far as improving safety. A 2015 study by AAA found that 57% of people surveyed were in favor of using such a system, and 28% were strongly in favor of using such a system. So, costs. Based on industry standards, initial costs are estimated to be $5,000 per approach per month of an intersection. And a typical configuration would be 2 approaches. And when you have a 4-way intersection, that would be 4 approaches. You don't typically do the side streets unless it was really a major intersection. So you would go, for instance, let's say it was an intersection, not that we're picking them tonight, but say it was Lancaster Avenue, you would probably do east-west of Lancaster Avenue, as an example. Revenue generated by violations will be applied first to cover the monthly costs. Any additional revenue is divided between the municipality and the system provider. So next steps. We need feedback if you want us to continue to pursue research and start working with a build-up on which intersections have the highest crash rates, the most violations for red lights, and those kind of things, and also start interacting with PennDOT about what the next steps of the program, because we require PennDOT approval to move forward as well. And lastly, you'll note the last line on the presentation. PennDOT does have final decision on the installation locations, based on working with us on the data that's presented. So, open for discussion, answering questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. We'll open for Commissioner comment and questions, and we'll turn first to President Sinai.
Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Mike, thank you for bringing this to us. I am really delighted that we get to take a look at this and assess it and make a decision on it. Fortunately, most of us were not here on the prior board when they decided not to do it, so we get to make a new decision about whether, with the information that you provided, whether we want to do it. I'm strongly in support of this. I think the evidence shows that it really increases safety. Your memo to us mentions the cost and the revenue that we might get from it. To me, that is really not the issue at all. I think I would be delighted if we collected zero revenue from this, because that would mean that no one ran red lights, and that would have maximized the increase in safety. I think it is money well worth spending on these intersections to do this. I think the evidence is compelling, and thank you for giving us the experience from Abington. They had a significant decline in their crash statistics. That doesn't even account for the spillover effect that you mentioned, that maybe they had declines in other intersections. It doesn't account for the fact that some of this time was during COVID, where people weren't really driving anyway, right? Some of the post period. So you couldn't have had maybe that goes the other way, doesn't it? Okay, he's saying yes. Even though, okay, the other 6 years, and I think we've all experienced that attention to red lights seems to have gotten worse. I don't know if you're nodding. I don't know if that's LMPD's experience. It seems to have gotten worse. I mean, this seems to be a bigger problem than even that was in the past. Thanks. Hopefully this is something that the board supports. I think it'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sinai. Commissioner Zella.
Thank you. Mike, on your first page, you didn't indicate that Abington participates. You said Ben Salem and Warrington. Do you mean, don't all three participate?
Abington has it now, Philadelphia has it now, Ben Salem and Warrington are implementing it.
Oh, they're in the process of implementing it. Got it, okay. This is the largest category of complaint that commissioners get, traffic speed.
Listen, speed, correct.
And, aggressive and distracted driving has increased. I mean, that you told us that, and anecdotally, that makes sense. And we should do this, it's time, in my view. And I'm sure that 10 years ago, I supported it, but the rest of the board didn't. And
Let's try to check the tapes.
Isn't that your recollection? And do you consider this, if we start, is it a pilot, or do we start with whatever number of intersections the police department recommends and that we approve? Is it a pilot, or is it essentially a permanent
I would not suggest that it's a pilot. I think we have to make a decision based on the data collected. We can come back to you with saying these are the locations that make sense, and you decide if that is the right way to go. You're now fully into the system.
Yeah.
As you can see, that's what Abington did. They didn't see any reason to pull back or change it. There is, if you are at a location, say for 10 years, and you've got a great reduction in crashes, you're not seeing as many violations, you can move the system.
What was the last part you said?
You can move the system to another intersection.
But do we initially select the number? Can't we increase the number as time goes on?
We could, absolutely. But again, it would be based on data collection and determination if it meets the minimum requirements, and PennDOT agrees with our suggestions.
Great. Thanks for doing the research. I'm glad it's on the agenda. I think we should do it.
Thank you, Commissioner Zella. Commissioner Kramer?
Do you have any idea how many intersections would be appropriate without doing the research? And any sense of where they might be without doing the research?
I think that's a little bit putting the cart in front of the horse, because you have to do the research to even make a request to PennDOT.
Okay.
I mean, clearly we know where the main roads and where the traffic congestion is in Lower Merion Township and where speeding is. So our main east-west corridors are prime locations of which will show up, and we'll have to wait and see from the data collection.
Okay. Thank you. I'm fully in favor of this.
Thank you. Commissioner Grimes?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on board with it also. Just two questions. Does this work, or has it ever been implemented in a way different? What you showed us is if somebody is clearly outside of the stop area when the light turns red. Sometimes there's problems where people creep into the intersection, or like I see in front of Lower Merion High School. I hate to keep picking on them tonight, but where people come out from Church Road at the beginning, it's 7:30 in the morning, and creep out because they know the light's about to turn, so they block the whole intersection of Montgomery Avenue. Is this capable of picking up that kind of behavior, or is it just where you have to cross the painted white line, solid white line, when the light turns red?
What it's looking for is, as the light, the technology is associated with the light turning red, and taking a picture, as you saw, of what's occurring then. As to if somebody goes after it, I'd have to look into it. I don't know the answer to that right off the bat.
Yeah,
but, I mean, the big key is you want to avoid those serious accidents, which is the people moving 25, 30, 40 miles an hour when they're going through a red light.
Yeah, and that's terrific. I'm just thinking if it's capable of preventing, like blocking the box kind of things also, that'd be something else to consider. But if it's not capable, that's fine. Second question, do you know what Abington imposes? You said a maximum of $100. What's the fine that they're doing, or the other communities?
Yeah, it's $100.
The 100? Are the others, as far as you know, also going to do the full 100?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gavin?
Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Couple of questions. So one, when you showed us those videos, and to piggyback a little bit on Commissioner Grimes, you had that car flying through, but you had a car that was in the intersection waiting to make a left. They obviously went through the red, being safe, waiting for that other car. Did they get fined as well?
No, they are. That was a legal term. If you've established yourself in an intersection, and you can go after it turns red.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not a violation.
Okay, cool. When you had said that this is a way to automate, some officer time. So how much time, you said it's like 2 minutes for 700 to 1,000. That's like 2,000 minutes, 30 hours a year, it sounds like, if you do the math, like on the outside. How much time do our officers spend kind of doing this kind of red light enforcement right now?
So we actually publish on a quarterly basis. We change up quarterly, basically. We keep statistics on where crashes are occurring, so we want to hit those locations for focused enforcement. And also we keep track of complaints. So that's the two lists that we keep updating. We keep track then officers and beats, and then if there's any extra officers out there, go to these locations. We keep track of times, and they're there. And I can tell you when I did it, it would be you'd sit. I mean, you might only be there for 5 minutes because you got a call,
right?
Or you'd sit there 10 or 15 minutes to watch it, and by the time you either go back out and patrol your area, or you probably got a call anyhow, and you got to leave.
So you have the officers who are reviewing who have to review the videos.
Mm-hmm.
Plus you have the officer who has to run looking at Abington, they had somebody who's reviewing it, somebody who's running the program, and then a civilian person. I'm in favor of the program. Let me take a step back. I'm in favor of the program. I think it's wonderful. I'm wondering from a time perspective. It sounds like it's not a time-saving initiative because, there's more work that we're going into it. It seems like it's very well worth it. It's a great safety initiative. you have 2 police officers. Can we handle that load? I know we are understaffed right now because of, the inability to recruit new officers. Can we handle it if we put it in today with our current staff?
We'd have to look at, if you're given the green light, no pun intended here, to this program.
Dan's not here, so.
Exactly the amount of time, but I can tell you from my experience, when we looked at it in 13, we did not see it being an issue as far as being able to handle within traffic safety.
Okay.
And I would tell you this is not a suggestion to increase any positions, whether it be civilian or police officers in the department.
So that was
You would handle within your staffing.
Would the civilian be a civilian member of the police department?
Already in the police department.
Okay, gotcha. So we're not
that's the
hiring.
way they choose to do it. And we would probably use somebody in administrative staff to do some of the record keeping, of course.
Gotcha.
Because that
okay.
makes sense.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Can you, on slide, I just want to understand the costs in Abington. So you had on slide 20, it said total reimbursed administrative and overhead costs since 2013, 526,000 about. So does that mean the total cost to implement this program over the 10 years was 526,000 and that was all completely reimbursed?
Yeah, so what your cost would be is we would keep track of the time spent administering to the program. So in their example, the staff member, and keep in mind, that isn't 40 hours a week for all 3 people.
Of course.
That's the number they choose and the way the process they set up. So whatever amount of time you have, and you have to show what your pay is for those positions, that's your cost. That's part of the cost of the program. That is what gets reimbursed. And, for the equipment as well, they have not. The other thing, just get a little bit more into the weeds, if, say, the program in a particular month is not bringing in sufficient number of violations and fines to pay the monthly costs, those costs are actually deferred. It's not like you're going into the red to make a payment, and if, another month picks up, you can get back on the plus side there in that regard.
Gotcha.
And those extra funds, they get funneled to the state for RLE grants, which you might have heard of before. And it does help that if you are a contributing member to that fund, that if you put in grant requests,
right,
you might get a better review of what you're requesting.
That makes sense. So if I'm reading it right, Abington, over 10 years, this has cost them nothing, essentially, because
They
everything's been
found, right,
reimbursed.
they did not find that they had any unexpected costs, and it did not cost them
So net
to run the program.
was zero. That's wonderful, on top of a great safety implementation.
Yeah, I think your point, many people have made it, this really should be looked about, as far as, particularly since there isn't a cost per se of making money. This is about saving people from injuries and serious life-changing type of incidents that they're involved in.
No doubt. Do you know how many intersections Abington does?
Yes, 3.
3, and so 6 approaches total?
I believe in just conversations, one of the 3 intersections might not have a dual approach, might just be one. But,
okay. But around 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Am I allowed to ask, in your mind, are we looking at 3, 10, 100 intersections? Like what?
If
what's
I was
the scope
guessing,
that
I'd
you're
say
thinking
start
of?
off with 3.
Okay, so not too many. Can we put signs everywhere and say this one's, even if it's not being used? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Whalen?
Certainly, I would start off by saying I find it a little unsettling this evening that I am completely in lockstep with Commissioner Gavin. It's a strange scenario for both of us. He asked almost every question I had, so the last one I have is, because I am resoundingly in favor of this, is there a speed camera program that we can start just like this one?
We get this question frequently. There is a speed camera program in the state, and it only exists on Roosevelt Boulevard in Philadelphia. There and in around construction zones, specific construction zones, they're permitted to put up speed cameras, again, at the permission of PennDOT. Nobody else can have speed cameras. So you can answer all your constituents' questions about that. No, we cannot start a speed camera system in Lower Merion Township.
Not even if I pass an ordinance renaming
yeah, you have to go a little bit higher. Yeah.
Roosevelt Boulevard? All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodring.
Yeah, just have one quick question, because I mean, I can think of a list of like 25 intersections at this moment. But are we limited on which roads we can recommend to PennDOT? So if it's a state road, let's say, versus a township road, are we limited in that capacity of what we could recommend?
I don't believe there's, what you just outlined, there's an issue with, it has to come down to our crash statistics for the intersection.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. Do any of these offenders get points?
There's no points associated.
There's no points, okay. And how long would it take to implement a program like this?
We
Once it's
finish
approved?
the research, and then, of course, you have to go out and acquire through proper procedures, the vendor, and also involve PennDOT in the selections being made. So it's going to take several months
Okay,
to get
so
it down the road.
if it's approved, it probably wouldn't go into effect until September, or at least the second half of this year.
I would think that's reasonable. It's going to take that many months, sure.
Also, what you're describing is that a vendor and our police department would share in the cost and the revenues of this program. 10 years ago, it was my recollection that the police would get an administration fee, and the rest of the money would go to the state. But this seems to have changed over 10 years. Is that right?
I didn't look at the comparison from 2013 to now. I'm not sure.
That just stuck in my mind 10 years ago. It may have not been the reason, but I think that there was a little pushback on, we're working and we're giving money to the state. And
Well, that's still consistent. The state always
wins.
got funding.
But this, what you're saying is that the fees for this work would be split between the vendors and the police department. And you said that if there's any surplus, it would go to the state, but that it would be easier to apply for grants.
Well, you can apply for Harley grants,
Yeah.
but, the fact that you're supplying some support for that funding can't hurt you.
Okay. I'm certainly in favor of this, not because of the money part, but again, I have seen too many people that look upon red lines as guidelines.
Suggestions, yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Churchill. Any other commissioner comment up on Zoom there? No? Okay. Any public comment here or online? No, yeah. It sounds like we like it. Thank you,
We'll
Superintendent.
continue with the research.
Yeah, and one more thing, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but we do have a request for just a little
And I have
update
two other things
on
once you-
burglaries.
go ahead.
Okay, great. Any burglary update and anything else you have, Joe?
Yeah, good news. Burglaries are down. That South American, what's it called, theft group, burglar crews, have not really been in our area. That's not to say that they haven't gone out of existence. They're still around, but I think the combined work of state, federal, and local departments throughout the country have, put a dent in their activity.
Good to hear.
And you want to bring up the two announcements? So Jody's going to bring up two events that are coming up. So tomorrow we will have a Coffee with a Cop event on Wynwood Road at the Spread Bakery on East Wynwood Road. And the time of that is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's an opportunity for anybody who's out and about at that time, stop in, talk to police officers about anything on their mind. It's a great opportunity for interaction. And again, it's tomorrow between 9 and 11 a.m. And then the second announcement coming up.
Which, for whatever reason, I cannot get it moved.
There you go.
And I can't get it to be full screen.
That's fine. So National Take Back Day is coming up. We do this annually. The DEA has this, again, it's a national day, but it's also supported locally by a district attorney's office. So it's Saturday, April 27th, and the time just disappeared from the screen. Let me pull it up off here. I think it's 10 to 2, right? 10 to 2 on that Saturday. And if we could show that, again, you would also see in our lobby is a medical disposal box. Even though this is promoting this particular day, that medical disposal box is available to our residents every day of the week. So if you have expired prescription drugs, any other kind of drugs in your house that you'd like to dispose of, keep them out of hands of people they don't belong to. And also, it's environmentally helpful, you know. So we recommend that you can, there it is again. It's right there in the front lobby. But also come by on Saturday, particularly if you have a large cache of things at home you want to get rid of, and we'll dispose of it through to the district attorney's office. And that's the two announcements I had.
Thank you, Superintendent McGrath. And that concludes the business of the Police Committee, President Sinai.
Well, thank you very much, Vice President Kramer. And with that, that concludes the business of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners for this evening. Have a good night, everyone.